So creating a brand style guide, is it important? You have no idea. Is it easy? Well, we're going to look into that now. My name is Ian Burr and you're watching Design. Alright, so let's look at how to create a brand style guide. Firstly, what is a brand style guide? Well, it is an important business document that maintains consistency across your entire organization. And I'm talking about letterheads, email signatures, branding on the side of your car, signage, every little thing you can imagine. A brand style guide gives direction on how documents are composed, visual marketing formatting, and social media guidelines. Okay, but why have a brand style guide? Why indeed? The number one answer to this is consistency. And now consistency in a brand style guide maintains your message for a start. It creates accountability and it allows measurability because your brand style guide is a reference point for other people to measure and work from. All right, so we're going to create a new slideshow document, and you can use any slideshow program such as PowerPoint or Google Slides or Keynote. You don't have to design it in this format if you don't wish. If you have a designer that wants to design it in their own way, by all means go ahead. I'm not restricting you. I just want to keep this simple and accessible. So for non-designers out there who are trying to run their own business, using something like PowerPoint or Google Slides is a fantastic way to do it. Okay, so let's get into it. The first section you want to look at is your logo. So let's drop that sucker in there. Okay, so when it comes to your logo, you want to make a list of rules of the correct way to use your logo. And the list might become pretty long depending on your organization or business. So you want the correct use of your logo when it comes to your website. You want the correct use of your logo when it comes to social media, when it comes to email signatures, signage, product placement, etc., etc., etc. You want to make sure that you are covered so that when your logo is placed in one of these things, you want to make sure that your logo is consistent across all these things. Another thing you want to look at is the spacing around your logo. Create a rule that says your logo has to have a centimeter of space around it at all times. Sometimes you'll use the height of the text. Sometimes you'll use an element in the design to determine the space around it. If you're putting your logo next to a body of text or next to a photograph or whatever it is, you want to give it some space to breathe and to be more visually appealing. Another thing to make a list of in this section when it comes to your logo is a list of things to avoid. It's all good and well having a list of correct ways to use your logo, but it's also important to have a list of incorrect ways to use your logo because you always get someone who didn't know that they couldn't do it this way or whatever the case may be. So common examples would include not stretching the logo in various ways, maybe forbid rotating the logo, maybe forbid putting drop shadows and special effects, maybe forbid putting your logo on a busy background or a patterned background, whatever the case may be. Put a set of rules down of ways not to use the logo. All right, on to our second section of your brand style guide, and this is a big one, and this is the color palette. And in this example, we've only got one color, but your brand might have several. So you're going to have to adjust your section according to how many colors you have in your brand. All right, so before we get into things, there's a cool website called Coolors, which we'll look at now. So Coolors is this great little site for generating color schemes, whether it's for your branding, whether it's for a marketing campaign, whatever it may be. So let's just take a look at a few things here. If you go generate, you'll see it fills up the screen with several colors. And there you'll see the hex values at the bottom. And if you click on it, you'll see it gives the HSB, which is the hue, saturation, brightness value. There's your RGB values, your CMYK values, and it even lets you pick from a color board here. And you can even go more advanced into sets if you want to Pantone or Copic or whatever it is over there. Another interesting thing about coolers is that you can use a photo to generate a color scheme. So if you browse for a crop picture here, let's take a picture of my buddy and I. And as you can see, it's generated a color scheme, color palette from this picture. And if you want, you can even fine tune it a bit. If you want to do something like that. And there you go. And then you click OK. And there's your color scheme. So if you have a logo and you want to base all your colors in your branding style guide based on those colors, drop your logo into Coolers here, into this website. Allow it to generate a color scheme for you. So the type of thing you want in your color section on your brand style guide is the RGB, which stands for red, green, blue. And RGB is for when you're designing things that will appear on screens or monitors or anything that generates or emits light. And in this example, you can see the RGB value is 0, 162, and 24. So obviously the red value is 0. There's no red in that color whatsoever. The green value is very high. It's 162 units. And there's a little bit of blue. There's 24 units of blue in that color. Fantastic. Let's look at the CMYK. CMYK is when you're designing stuff that is to be printed on surfaces or paper, cardboard, plastic, whatever it may be. And it stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, and key. Key is the black element inside the CMYK colors. And as you can see, there's 100% of cyan, there's no magenta, 85% yellow, and 36% black. And so that code, or those values will be useful when printing. And the code that holds it all together is the hex value. The hex value retains the values, whether you're using RGB or CMYK, it doesn't matter. It will retain those values accurately so that you can use these colors depending on how you're exporting them. What's also important is to add perhaps the reason why you're using a particular color in your brand. For example, I've used this dark lime green, and it says it symbolizes the optimism and stability of our company values. So you've got to put a lot of thought into why you're using these colors. And the reason why you put something like that in is because if someone's referencing this brand style guide, you want them to remember that there's a bigger picture at play here. They're not just focusing on the design, although that's very important. They're also trying to maintain the bigger image of your brand and company. Another thing to look at is how your color works on light and dark backgrounds, whether it be in color or black and white or grayscale. Depending on what color schemes you have for your organization, you've got to make sure it works on light and dark surfaces. All right, the next section we're looking at is fonts and typography. Like I've said in a couple of other videos, fonts to design is kind of like dressing for an occasion. If you're going to the Oscars, you won't be wearing cycling gear. So let's check this out. So for a start, I've got my header, which is in a font called Chewy. Now, I got this from Google Fonts, and I just want to stop right there and say that Google Fonts is a fantastic resource to get the fonts you need for your business. All of those fonts are web optimized. They are optimized for print as well. And they come in many weights and forms and styles and large font families. And Google even suggests a good pairing with each font that it comes out with. So for example, when I was selecting Chewy as my font, Google suggested that I pair it with a font called Railway. And now Railway is a fantastic font. It comes in 21 different styles, from ultra thin to ultra bold, and all the italics and thicknesses in between. And it pairs really well with Chewy, kind of like in the way a good wine pairs with a certain meal. So for this example, I've paired Chewy with Railway. And then to give an example on your branding style guide is a good idea. And then maybe even go a step further and say, if you're creating an email document, the heading needs to be this size, the body text needs to be that size, If it's going onto the website, the heading needs to be this size, the body text needs to be that size, etc. So you might need to elaborate a bit more, depending on how your organization works, on the use of fonts, headers, and body text. All right, another section would be extra items, and that all depends on your business. I've just given you the 3 main ones for now. But for example, you might have a section that deals with the rules of how your organization should deal with photography. Perhaps you need some rules on how to deal with iconography, if that's your business is into doing that sort of thing. Perhaps animations, if your business is into creating video content, whatever it may be. And finally, you want to export that document as a PDF and make sure that it's accessible to everyone in the office or everyone that needs to access it. You can print it out, save it, send it as an email, whatever the case may be. Make sure it's referenceable, make sure it's accessible to everyone in your organization. If you want to look at some examples of branding style guides, check out the link in the description below for 30 amazing examples of branding style guides of some of the famous brands that we are all familiar with. If you enjoyed this video, please leave your comments below. Subscribe to my channel. My name is Ian, and you're watching Design.